Hi class, it's Steve again. Today I'm going to try to cover, well, even though the reading assignment is for chapters 4 and 5, I'm really going to only hit on a couple places in chapter 5. You're obviously all able to read, so I don't want to read things to you, but I want to point out a couple of interesting things that I think of in chapter 5 in particular. Chapter 5 is fascinating to me because it's all about power and influence. And on page 134, it lists 5 different kinds of power. The first one being coercive power. And that's the kind of power you use like to punish people if they don't do something right. In some sense, I think of boot camps. You know, if you don't do something, then you're relegated to something, doing some type of deed, or you're punished somehow. My younger brother, who is now retired from the police force up in Detroit, was actually initially a Michigan State patrol officer, or that's what he wanted to do. But he said his first day there, they started telling him stuff like he was going to have to scrub the floor with his toothbrush and all kinds of stuff like that, so he got out of the situation. But that's kind of coercive power. It's where you coerce somebody to do something. It's punitive more than anything. The next kind is reward power, which is exactly what it says. You get rewarded for doing something good. So it's the carrot and the stick. The stick being coercive power, the carrot being reward power. That's the kind of power that is second in my list, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But I think reward power is very positive. People like positive reinforcement. They like getting accolades and getting attaboys. The third kind is legitimate power, which is based upon your position. So if you are a medical doctor, then you have a certain degree of power simply because you are a medical doctor. If you are a judge, you have a certain degree of power simply because you are a judge. So that's legitimate power. Expert power is when the power is based upon your expertise in something. Like in the military, you may be the best tanker that there is, or tank driver. I'm not sure, I'm probably using the wrong terms. But because of that, you exert influence and power because people look to you because you are the expert. So that's expert power. You get looked to simply because you have the expertise, and because of that, you can influence others. And the last one is referent power. And that's kind of the role model type, where people watch you and they see how you conduct yourself, a person of integrity, a person of good ethics, and people want to model themselves after you. I suppose, though, one thing he doesn't mention with referent power, I suppose that could be bad as well. If you think about it, what if your boss was somebody who got ahead by cheating, by doing the wrong things? If you were a person who was not of high integrity to begin with, perhaps you would see that person then as a role model of how you get ahead in this world. You cheat, you lie, and you do all these different things. So I'm not sure if that falls into referent power, but I think it is, because I think it's a matter of being a role model more than anything. Now, on page 135 and 136 is a personal power profile. Let me encourage you to please take that, and I don't think you'll be surprised at your results, although you might be, but it gives you your scoring for all 5 levels of power. And just to give you mine, my highest was referent power, which is the role model kind, and I got a 4.75 on that. The second one was a reward one, which I got 3.75. Then I got legitimate power as a 2.75, expert power as 2.5, And in coercive, I got a 1. So I don't use coercion very much to, I don't punish people in order to get them to do something. Sometimes coaches do that. You think about, okay, if you don't make, in basketball, if you don't make this shot, then you're going to run laps. Or in football, you don't make a certain play during practice, you're going to run laps. So there's a punitive degree of power there. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, so please read over that because I think you'll find that really interesting. The other thing I want to talk to you about is a couple of issues under ethical issues in influence, and that's starting on page 143. The one thing that's pretty important is on page 145. It's called impression management. Now, whether you know it or not, we all do this to a degree, and that is we manage our impression to other people. In other words, we want people to look at us in a certain way. So let's say you're somebody who wants to become an officer, and let's say you're a first lieutenant and you want that next promotion. You will conduct yourself in a manner that is not only first lieutenant like, but also the next level like. So you manage the way other people view you so that they view you in a light that you want them to. And typically it's a positive light. So that's a real important concept, impression management. The other thing I wanted to mention along here was a really interesting case study, and I'm not sure if I assigned this to you or not. I can't really recall. But it's on page 148, and it's a case study about to pad or not to pad. And what it's talking about is resumes, and I just think this is really interesting because it's relative to you and I, whether you're a hiring person or whether you're someone looking for a job. The question becomes, do I pad my resume or do I not? And in this particular case study, they talk about a young man who's going to pad his GPA or pad some part of his resume in order to get his foot in the door for this job. So the question becomes an ethical question, is it right? But also it becomes a question of impression management. Does it really matter if I have a 3.5? What if I had a 3.4? The job says, okay, you have to have a 3.5 and 1 year of experience. And let's say I have the 1 year of experience but a 3.4. Do I go ahead and just round it up that 1/10 of a point so I can make it sound like I have a 3.5 and I can get in that way? Or do I simply not do it because I didn't have a 3.5? So it's a really interesting case study. I hope you'll look through that. Again, I'm not sure if that's the one I assigned to you guys or not. I don't have that in front of me right now. And then the book goes into even greater detail about some other ways like deception, emotional labor. So I encourage you to read through those. Again, I don't want to read them to you, and I don't have anything particularly to add to these. But a few things that I brought up I think are important and I think is worth your particular attention. Do that profile though and see what kind of power base you have. I think you'll find it really interesting and hopefully not surprising. Hopefully you know what kind of leader you are and what kind of influencer you are. So that's all I have for 2 chapters, 4 and 5. For your paper, you can write out of either chapter. You don't have to write 2 papers. You just write 1 paper, but you pick a topic either from 4 or 5 and write it from there. All right. Well, it's good talking to you guys. We'll talk soon. Bye.